Welcome to the Insurance Agency Success Podcast, the only show that helps independent insurance agencies grow their business while increasing their joy and happiness. I'm Eddie Price, founder of Genesis Software and an agency owner for more than 30 years. I've bought, started, sold, and scaled agencies, and for the last 25 years through Genesis, I've helped others do the same. And on this show, you're going to hear real stories and proven strategies so you can streamline operations, increase profits, and really enjoy the business that you've built. And if you'd like to learn more about how we can help your insurance agency, visit genesissoftware.com and click on the Request a Demo button. Hey, welcome to the podcast. Today, my guest is Todd Johnson. Todd is going to share with you how he has acquired 17 locations over the last 25 years. He's going to share with you the secrets to work-life balance and how that work-life balance can be instrumental in the success of your agency, helping your agency grow and helping your agency build a team of people that think more like you do. It's going to be a great episode, so stick around. Welcome to my good friend, long time no see, Todd Johnson.
It's been a long time. Golly, it's been a long time. We went from a period there where we saw each other all the time, and now we see each other never, and it's hard to believe.
Yeah.
You've aged a lot, by the way.
You've not. You're my guest, so you've not. So let's do this.
We're off to a good start, by the way.
Amen. First of all, truly thank you for being a guest. Tell me about your background and your agency, kind of where it was, how you got into the business, and let's bring us all the way up to now.
I was born into a farming family. So my dad was a row cropper and a turkey breeder. So we did eggs. We picked up eggs on the weekends, during the summer, after school, before school. And I just remember telling my dad one day, I'm like, Dad, I don't want to go to school. I just don't want to work. Just typical young teenage kid. And so he said, well, you got to work if you're going to live here. So that meant picking up eggs on the weekends, plowing fields whenever it was in season, all this stuff. And quickly I realized that turkeys did not celebrate weekends, Christmas, birthdays, etc. So I was like, yeah, I've got to do something different than this. So my dad gave me a few options. He said, schooling's important. I was not the first in my family to go to school, but not a whole lot of people had been to higher ed. So I felt it was important to do that. Then also, I took an interest in the family business. So at that point in time, I would have been, I guess, 13 when Dad started the agency. He was a Farm Bureau agent before that. He started being a Farm Bureau agent, I think, in 1988. And then, Eddie, you may have fallen into this group too, but a number of Farm Bureau agents in the early 1990s, Farm Bureau changed some of their stuff and really got into life insurance and pushing the life insurance piece. And Dad just wasn't really comfortable with that.
Don't mean to interrupt you, but I went to Farm Bureau in '89. So I graduated from the same university you graduated from, a decade or so later than you. But I went in '89, he went in '88, and then I think I left to start my agency in '91.
The same time when Dad left Farm Bureau in '91, in July of '91, started his agency, and I was 13 at the time. So I was still in high school, and then after school, I'd go to the insurance agency instead of to the farm. I'd go to the insurance agency and work in the afternoons. During the summers, during the week, I'd work at the agency. On the weekend, I'd work at the turkey farm. And so kind of did that through school. And so I realized this is something I kind of like. I didn't really, I had seen it over a number of 4 to 5 years by the time I got out. And one thing I do remember is when I was getting my license, I still lived at home. So I guess 18 is when you could get your license then. I don't know what the age is now, but at 18 you could get your license. I still lived at home. I remember going to the class on Woodline Road in Charlotte, and then coming home to my dad and saying, Dad, they are getting this all wrong. And he said, what do you mean? I'm like, they're teaching us this stuff and it's just nothing like how real business works. And I said, it just doesn't make sense. And I remember my dad telling me, saying, son, when it comes to insurance, if it's logical and reasonable, it's probably wrong. And I'll never forget him telling me, and that applies to a lot of things in life, by the way. Um, and so I remember getting the license, and then I said, and Dad said, I still want you to go to college. Still want you to get an education. So I said, okay. But I always in the back of my mind knew I wanted to come back and work in the agency. And so, again, started at 13. So fast forward 5 years, we've been in business, and we're in a small town, Wadesboro, North Carolina. It's in Anson County, still a very small, um, kind of a depressed county. Population's not growing even today. And so we did that during the summers when I was off at school during the regular year, and then during the summers I'd come back and work the agency. Well, when I graduated, a lot of my classmates and friends and stuff, they were going to work at this corporation or this corporation. I realized the corporate lifestyle was not for me. I'm just an old country boy, and that's what I wanted to kind of remain. And so stayed in the agency and decided to work full time. Well, my dad pulled me to the side and said, you know, I've got a standard of living that I'm enjoying. And I know you probably have some goals and aspirations or a standard that you would like to start living. And Wadesboro is just too small for the both of us. So I'm not gonna just push you out and make you go do it on your own, but I'm gonna help you a little bit, but you've got to open another agency. So I went to Monroe, North Carolina, which is in Union County. Just we consider ourselves a suburb of Charlotte, but Monroe's pretty good little ways. It's probably 35, 40 minutes from there. I started an agency from scratch in Indian Trail, which is pretty close to Charlotte. And let me tell you, starting an agency from scratch is very, very difficult. Um, had I not had my dad to help me, it would have been even more difficult. But I learned really quickly that that's a tough, tough road to hoe because you're trying to break into an industry that has a lot of it's a very sticky industry and it's just hard to break into. So we were continuously working to try to get that going. And I went off to a conference of some sort. And keep in mind at this point in time, I'm 21, 22 years old. And so being at that age, it's you're there at these conferences and there's some younger folks there, but majority of these people are going to be older and more established in what they're doing. And so I kind of felt like people didn't respect you. You just kind of felt, even if it was true or not, it didn't matter. You just felt like folks didn't respect you. And so I said, well, okay, that made me work harder though. So I kind of used that as a way to say, by golly, I'm going to make this thing happen one way or the other. I met an individual there who was older than me, probably about 10 years. And he had kind of gone through, he told me his story and he'd kind of gone through the same thing. And with that, he inspired me and and to get out and really try hard. But he'd put probably 10 years into it. He was probably in the 8 to 10 year range of his journey, and he had had enough. It's funny that he inspired me, but at the same time he had had enough. I know that's some irony there, but I said, well, let me pick up the banner of your agency and carry on and kind of get just buy your agency from you. Well, we started chatting, and lo and behold, he said, I think we got a deal. So we bought the agency. And so I took the where I'd started and the business I'd started there, and I bought this other one. And I rolled them together. Now I've got something where I can actually function and pay bills and not be in the red all the time. So that's kind of what kick started it off. And I'll skip along a little more in the story, but um, figured out really quickly though that purchasing agencies are a lot not easier, but it's a lot better route for me than starting an agency from scratch. And so fast forward, well, at some point in time in there, Dad told me, he said, you're the one kind of out beating the bushes, so why don't you become president of the company and let me be the vice president? And today, even still, I'm the president, and Dad's still the vice president. Even though he's 83, he'll still come into work and works hard. When Eddie, Dad, he'll work till the day he dies. He'll never retire. That's just kind of the way he is. And so Since then, fast forward 24 years, I think we've purchased right at 16 agencies, and we've merged some and just rolled books in, and I think right now we're probably, yeah, 16 agencies, I think, and then we have 6 locations, kind of from Charlotte down to Laurinburg. And one thing I left out, which I guess would be very relevant to this conversation, is in when I'm graduating college in the year 2000, which I think is a long time after you graduated from college, the same college, by the way. Um, One thing Dad was really big on, even though he was older, one thing that he always pushed the envelope on was making sure that the technology in our office was always cutting edge or was always pushing the envelope for us to actually be insurance agents and not be secretaries or clerical people. He wanted us to, the technology that was available, to be able to use that to utilize it so that our businesses, we could focus on the business aspect and growing the business. So even back in the 90s, I still remember, yes, it was dot matrix at the time, but I remember Policy Profiler, and I remember these groups, using this stuff that was amazing at the time. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. And even go, I think I'd like to say we had to have been one of the first 20 or 30 agencies in North Carolina that had voice over IP telephones and multiple offices connected to each other. But I remember in when I got out of school, one of the first tasks he gave to me in 2000 was he had heard about a kind of an up and coming agency management software, and he said, "I want you to go and check out this software." So, by the way, that's when you and I met. I don't. I'm just throwing that out there too. Um, but so I remember us meeting, and I like to say we kind of hit it off, and came. Yeah, it was crazy. We started as business owner and customer, but quickly that kind of faded to the back, and I'm still your customer, but I consider you a friend long before that. When I started with Genesis, I still remember the little race car that was the auto emblem on the button and the house under the home and all that. And I mean, this is probably 4,000 versions ago, but that's when we started with Genesis, and that was 25 years ago. And it's hard to believe, thinking back that long ago. So when we started that agency from scratch, or when I started that agency from scratch, I started it with Genesis. So we never made a transition in that particular office. And so fast forward to now, 6 offices. We probably have 15, 16 employees. We do a lot over the phone now. The business has changed dramatically. But I guess if in terms of a word of encouragement to all businesses or all agencies, I don't think that the agency is dying. I think the agency is thriving today more than ever, because we've gone from the time when you had that big push with Geico or these kind of guys to do stuff online, and I'm seeing a migration back to the agency. I don't know what you're seeing more from a national standpoint, because I know you're in a number of states, but I see it as it's kind of migrating back, and I think the agencies, at least the agencies that we work with on a statewide basis, is thriving now. Is what I'm seeing.
I'm seeing what feels like an unusual number of startup agencies over the last 24 to 36 months. And I'm seeing what surprises me as a higher success rate than I would have expected, because business is hard of any kind and statistics are against us, starting a business. 9 out of 10 fail or whatever it is. And then out of the 1 out of 10 that succeed, 9 out of 10 of those fail over the next 10 years. So, yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought much about it exactly like you said it, but in thinking about it, we have a lot of people coming to us that are starting agencies from scratch, and surprisingly, they seem to be making it work.
And well, maybe it's a combination of a number of things, in that I think Technology plays a role in that. I think younger folks, I'm seeing younger people get into the business at a younger age. And so you're getting that blend of the technologically more savvy individuals deciding to go into the business, the tools necessary to do it. But then the overarching, I think, again, is that old fashioned need for someone local to handle their business for them. And so once you kind of blend that together, I don't think it should be surprising once you think about it from that perspective.
Well, one thing when I started and when you started, being an entrepreneur wasn't really all that cool. As a matter of fact, I think there were probably times that people might have thought, "Oh, that means you're unemployed. You're looking for
Right.
work." Yeah,
You're
how's
self-employed.
I said, "How's that going, buddy?"
Kind of
Bless your
reminds you of
heart.
cousin Eddie on
Right.
National Lampoon's. He's holding out for management, you know.
Exactly. But now, and thought about this until this conversation. Now it's actually cool to be an entrepreneur.
Sure.
This startup, which the word startup didn't exist when we started, but
Right.
now everything's a startup, and it's cool to be self-employed. It's cool to be an entrepreneur. It's all over social media now. It's all over
Mhm.
YouTube and everywhere else. And these people are often creating cool content, and they're
And-
proud of the fact that they're entrepreneurial. And you know, you may know from. I'd love to hear. I want to hear about your politics here in a second, but that's not something I would normally ask somebody. I mean about your political career. I don't want to
Yeah,
hear
sure.
about your politics exactly.
Sure.
Um, but but I think small businesses sounds corny, but it's kind of the foundation of America.
It definitely is. You know, it's the small businesses that fund our roads, fund our infrastructure. The small businesses are, and this is an overused, tired term that we hear way too much, but it's truly the backbone of our economy. And these are the folks that have, and when I say these folks, I mean you, Eddie, and me are included in that collective. But we've got skin in the game. You know, and folks, I'll never forget talking to someone that was asking me, you know, what's going on? This has been a few years back. You know, is everything okay? And I said, yeah, everything's good. It's just we were going through a hard insurance market, and things it just kind of got tight and it was tough. And they said, is everything okay? I said, yeah, everything's fine, but I have, and at that time it was probably 10 or 12 people that worked in our agency. And I was sitting around one evening, probably a Friday evening, trying to kind of figure things out. And I started looking through the census of my employees. And I'm like, yep, yep. Out of the 10, let's say 10 at that point in time, 8 of the 10 were the primary breadwinners of their family. And so when you start weighing all of that in, plus I'm the primary breadwinner in my family, it isn't a matter of me just making it go for me. I've got 80% of my staff that has to have this agency be successful so that they can provide for their families because I knew every one of their kids, their I knew all of their families. And so it was a big deal. And I think the small business entrepreneur has that personal vested interest, which puts that drive to make them successful. And again, now more than ever, especially as you were talking about with all the social media, and it's kind of hip now to be your own boss, so to speak. And maybe on the outward, now on the inside, it's kind of tough because if you don't get the work done, you don't get to eat. I mean, you're not punching a clock. I always laugh at the 40-hour work week because the entrepreneur does not know what a 40-hour work week is. It's hard to turn it off. But I'm actually pretty optimistic about the future. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, this young group coming in, we're in trouble." I mean, I can kind of see some of that, but in the end, I'm pretty encouraged by what I see with some of these folks.
Yeah, I was in a conference in Dallas week before last, and I don't have the statistics, and I should, so I shouldn't even bring it up not having them. The statistics they were showing about how much the young people really do care was not what we assume, because every generation from now, probably back forever, has always felt like the new one coming along didn't have it as hard as they did. They're soft and they're lazy. You've always heard that. and they don't like the right kind of music and all that. Anyway, I won't go into it because I don't have the stats, but it was just really some encouraging information about the future of our country and our young people. So that was cool for me to hear, and it was a great conference. So does that kind of bring us up till now?
Yeah, I think so. And ultimately, what I can tell you, and I probably only hit on it a pinch, but I think you would be hard pressed to find any person, yourself, myself included, that has been able to be successful in business that did it simply on their own. I think it's you're going to find people that have taken a chance on you, people that have invested their time, their treasure. For me, it was my dad, and it was that gentleman I met at a conference, and it was that guy that I met who started a software company, probably at a technical college for a project. You know, and these are people who, it's a collective. A lot of times you can't point to one thing, but you can think, man, I wouldn't be here because of that one person or because of this person. That advice. That's why I've always been a big fan of associations and going to conferences, and because of the information you can get from it. And I know everybody's like, oh, I don't want to go to this conference. I'd rather be here. It's costing me money, da da da. Some of the best information I've ever learned and some of the most profitable ideas I've ever gotten were not my own, but something that someone else is doing in another agency or even in another field. And it's like, how can I take that and use that in my field?
Success leaves clues, and just follow the clues. Don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, right down to the very Bible itself. Just follow what somebody's told you to do before, what they've done that works, and you're probably going to come out of this thing okay. So, in your experience, there's probably never been any challenges
Hmm.
in the.
Yeah, none.
What do you think if you were to identify either based on your own experience and or what you think the average insurance agency struggles with? What do you think that the top one, two, or third thing is? What's the big one, two, or three things that is the most challenging that you kind of have to keep working at maybe?
People, people, and people. That's your top three. And I know that's not necessarily what you were looking for. As an entrepreneur or as a business owner, you think about business in a certain way. This is your baby. This is what you've invested your time and treasure in. The people that you hire, the hard reality is they're not invested in your business to the degree that you are. And so it's very hard to find good people. The first hurdle is finding the person that fits with your agency, that can do the work, that has the personality, that has the cohesiveness with your other employees. Finding that right fit is the first problem, but that's only half of the problem that you've got to solve. The next half of that problem is, as you were saying, these companies are opening all the time. You've got to figure out a way to keep that person from a longevity standpoint. We are in the people business. Yes, we want to write insurance, but we are truly in the people business. And so I would say ultimately the problems in most years that we've been in business has always been identifying, securing, and keeping good employees that not only are good at their job, but also buy into the mission of the agency. My agency has my last name. I remember going to my dad early on saying, Dad, it's hard to market when it's your last name. Now, I was always envious of you because you had Carolina Insurance, and I can market that. That's easy. But with me, it was always harder because it was my last name. And I'll never forget my dad telling me, he said, son, our last name is in our business for a reason. Because I want you, when you transact business or when we do business, you need to understand that your reputation, my reputation, our family's reputation, even our family members that have long passed, their reputation is on the line when we conduct business. So we're going to conduct business in an ethical in a true way, in a prudent way, so that way this is a constant reminder of that. So getting these employees that also buy into that family niche and how we operate truly as a family. And so That's why earlier I said I know these people's kids. I tell people, if you're more into a corporate environment where it's very sterile and clinical, you're not going to be happy with us. Because with our agency, we're a small town agency. We treat our employees like their family. When they hurt, we hurt. And so you've got to find that right mix. So ultimately, the biggest problems I think as you grow you'll face is going to be employees making sure that they're the right fit for your agency and then being able to keep them.
Totally agree. Is there a second?
Competition is always going to be you know, a wise man once told me competition is not a bad thing. It's just an opportunity to be better. And we truly try to operate that way. And, with most agencies in this state, or in North Carolina, I'm sure in other parts of the country as well, you can pick a golf club in your bag and you can hit with about any club in your bag another insurance agency. Uh, and that goes for both customers and employees that you're trying to keep both of them. But the competition is not necessarily a bad thing because something that my employees, if they're listening to this, they're going to roll their eyes and say, "Oh, here we go again." But I always tell them that at the start of every agency, whenever we have a employee meeting, it's business as usual is out of business. And the quickest way to go out of business is to do it like we've always done it. That doesn't mean the way we've always done it is bad or that we have to do wholesale changes. It simply means that we have to take what's worked, continue to perfect it, and then if it doesn't work, don't be scared to abandon that. Try something different. I think we've got some true cornerstones of how business has worked that we don't have to let go of, but you always have to be sharpening that saw and trying to improve ourselves with it. And so I would say competition it would be number two. And then um, number three, if you just want to get into the actual functionality of just insurance business, the insurance business would be, right now we are in a pretty hard market and the ebbs and flow of the markets and how, right now the markets are difficult. So you're having property side deductibles are out of control, coverages are decreased, premiums are going up, eligible lines are being shut down. A lot of that deals with inflation. A lot of it deals with the reinsurance piece. But you've got a number of factors there. So I know one of our largest carriers that we write with came to us, I don't know, within probably 8 to 12 months ago and said, we're only going to let you write X amount of business this year because we're really trying not to grow. That's pretty tough, Eddie. I'm sitting here in my mind, I'm thinking, that's pretty tough because we were expecting to write X amount, and now you're telling us we can only write this amount. Um, we're hoping to see a loosening of the markets, but I think that just the actual insurance industry in general, it would be number three because of the hardening markets.
And not so much carrier appointments in your case, just the market.
I guess for us, the carrier appointments piece, we went through that fight for a number of years. But at this point in time, that's less of an issue. But please don't allow me to marginalize or belittle that struggle because we went through it and you went through it. And pretty much if anybody that's been in this business or that started early on or is in scratch, you're going to go through the carrier appointment piece. And anybody that's in this area of the country would probably recognize the name of Rick Pierce. Rick Pierce was now it's I joke with him there too. I say, now, who are y'all with now? Because y'all change names about every month. I joking, of course. But I remember Rick Pierce in 1991. Dad went to get an appointment with at the time it was Inagon, and they made us wait for 24 months. I think we had to be in business for 24 months before they would give us an appointment. And then when we did get appointed with them and we started writing business, they'd come in and want us to write more business, et cetera. And I said, well, you can wait a couple of years before we really start pushing business for you. And even today, so Rick does some government work for National General now, so I see him pretty often. And I always remind him that he made me wait for 2 years because now he's asking me for stuff. So I remind him.
Well, tell your dad he should have gone to see Mark Devereaux because in 1991, I met with Mark Devereaux and he gave me a contract like that.
Oh, well, you were a lot nicer person than us, I guess. And Mark's a great guy. I miss Mark. I hadn't seen him in many years. He was a great guy.
Not seen him in a while either. All right, cool. So got the challenges. As a matter of fact, before asking this question, I'm afraid I'll forget this, and it doesn't really have a great segue into this or out of it, but I want to throw your political career into this. If you can do the 60-second or 2-minute version, that'd be awesome because it doesn't necessarily relate to the podcast being about insurance agencies. But I think it's interesting. I think it's cool and very impressive. So can you give the elevator speech for your political career?
I serve in the North Carolina Senate, and I have served. I'm in my seventh year here. I'm from Union County, and I represent, I would say, two-thirds of Union County and a small, very small child's portion of Cabarrus County in the North Carolina Senate, where I actually chair commerce and insurance. And so, all your, whether you like it or whether you don't, the insurance bills that have been coming through for the last, I guess I've chaired it now for 5 years. So the last 5 years have come through our committee, and I run most of the insurance legislation here. So
So
good,
send your
bad, or
emails. Send your emails to Todd at.
yeah, there you go. Yeah. Todd Johnson at ncleg.gov. And actually, I'm actually sitting in my, because we come in on Monday, so I'm sitting in my legislative office here in Raleigh today. So
And you're passionate about that, so I respect what you've done there. What you've done, most people wouldn't take the time to serve. So appreciate what you do.
well, I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity. The only reason I have the privilege of serving in the Senate and represent the people of Union County is because of the unbelievable staff that I have at home working in our insurance agency that truly have bought into the family atmosphere that we have. I mean, they are the best of the best, and would not have the opportunity to do this otherwise.
Glad you said that. Love it. Do you spend much time educating? That's how I got into that. I know you're so busy. You're doing more because you own few other businesses. So we don't have time for all that outside of insurance and political stuff. Do you spend much time reading or learning?
I read any opportunity that I get a chance. So unfortunately, it's limited to Saturdays and vacations because during the week, so Monday through Thursday, I'm typically reading someone's great idea for an insurance bill that is horrible. That's never worked a day in insurance. And so I have to read a lot of that stuff during the week. Um, but in terms of personal time for reading, you would know, Eddie, I'm very big on history. I love reading history. I love pretty much anything history related. So I do read a lot, but I would say 99% nonfiction. And the 1% that is fiction is typically alternative history. So still pretty much nonfiction, except they add a little flair into it to make it a little more interesting. But yeah, I love to read. I've got me a Paperwhite Kindle that it's probably about time to get a new one.
Do you ever read anything business?
I do some. Typically, that when I read business stuff, it's more when someone like yourself or somebody that I look up to or that I respect that says, "Hey, you need to read this book." But only if someone recommends it. I do if someone recommends it.
Are you a member of any associations?
I'm a member of the Big I. I'm a member of AINC, which is more in the private passenger auto agency
I had Miles as
association.
a guest recently, so we talked a little bit
Oh,
about that. Yeah,
good, good.
yeah.
It's a good organization, small group, but it's still they do a lot of good work. And then other than that, usually business groups like Chamber of Commerce's and stuff of that nature. Serve on the Jesse Helms Center Foundation Board. Oh, I'm a Rotarian as well.
As far as the big eye, do you try to attend the events or don't have time?
Unfortunately, because of my role when I go to these events, it's in an official capacity. So I do go to a number of these events, but I don't have the luxury of going as an attendee. I usually have to go as a speaker or something of that nature. It's very difficult to take the hat off when you go to these things because it's just the nature of it.
I get that. I don't get it. I can't relate, but I hear you. I don't have that
You
problem.
understand at least.
I can imagine. I can only
Yeah.
imagine. So these last two questions, from your experience, you also are married for many years. As a matter of fact, you just know she had a birthday. I was trying to think, do you have an anniversary or a
It's
birthday? You got
coming
a
up in 20, I'm looking at the calendar, 29 days.
okay,
Or
and
no,
that's
30 days coming up in or 28. I don't know. It's June 11th. So send gifts.
How many
and
years, real
gift
quick?
ideas.
How many years, real quick?
30 or 22, 22, 22.
Okay.
Yeah.
So two great boys. First question is advice for other people about work-life balance. What could you have heard at an early age, maybe that you didn't, or what did you hear that you luckily believed and embraced? And then we're going to transition out of the work-life balance feedback or recommendation into general advice for anyone who maybe they're not where you are, and one day they think that's cool. He's married with all these kids, and all these kids with two kids, and he's got this other life stuff going on with these other interests, and six or so locations, and been successful for 25 years. So start with the work-life balance. What's your advice?
And I can tell you, without the work-life balance, all the rest of it means nothing. Yeah. I'm a family guy, Eddie. You know that. You've actually carried one of my kids off of a ski slope when he got injured. I mean, so you've seen our kids from a very young age. But I can tell you, this gets said a lot in concept, but I don't think folks actually do it. Because maybe it feels bad to do it this way, but it works for me. Actually, take your calendar and book time, not only for yourself, but for your family, and make sure that folks, their time is important to them as well. And so I have not done it perfect. I can tell you that. I've made plenty of mistakes along the way, but I've tried to, especially now that I'm out of town. It took me being out of town 4 days a week to really understand the importance of being there, because I can't be there. So that's been taken away from me. So when I do have the opportunity, I try to make sure that I put the time and the focus where it needs to be. And so I really went back to what my mom always taught me. At first it sounded good, but I really didn't lean into it like I should. But mama's always told me God, family, others. Make sure you make time for God, make sure you make time for your family, and then make sure you make time for others. But with that, seems to work for us is I literally block off time in my schedule. And what that means is this right here, this gets sat down. I mean, you literally set it in the other room and you focus on the now. You focus on the kids. And so now mine are 19 and 17. And so we started that a few years ago. And I got to enjoy really the last, before they become driving age and had girlfriends and could go out and do their thing. Uh, Going to the events, the soccer, the basketball, going to the, going to breakfast before school, making sure we made that the focal point. Um, the work stuff will take care of itself. And I hate to steal a line from you, Eddie, but I would say take it as a compliment that I still remember you and I talking about this. I bet it's been 10 years ago, but you said to me, and I don't remember what was going on at that time, but it stuck with me. So you made an impact on me. Between my work life, my family, and my health, if something has to go, please God, let it be my work. And so if you remember that policy, that payment, that whatever, in the grand scheme of it all, doesn't hold a candle to your family life. So that would be, I would say, always let the family be the default. Everything defaults back to your family and your personal life.
Well said. Is there anything that you can add then? The advice for somebody starting out, is your advice contacts, persistence, is it work-life balance, I guess? Maybe you just answered that to some degree, but anything to add?
Yeah, I think ultimately is, don't assume you know all the answers, which I know that's probably not a big problem up front, but get in front of as many people as humanly possible in the industry or the space that you want to get in, and truly listen to listen, not listen to respond. Get in there and actually get to know folks. The relationships that you're building today make a difference. Stay involved in the association. Stay involved. There was something we did for a good long while in Monroe, and Eddie, you probably know some of the folks involved in it. These were direct competitors, and I don't mean competitor in another county or competitor across town. I mean, competitors that were a mile up the street, or that are definitely pulling from the same pot. We'd actually go to lunch or breakfast together about once every month or so just to catch up. No, we were not being coercive or anything like that, or setting anything. It was just, hey, what's going on? What are you guys finding that works? And we were very fortunate, or I feel like I was fortunate to have folks in our community that were willing to disclose and to talk. And so again, no one person gets there on their own. And so I would say be very outgoing and go to events, talk to other agents, learn as much as you possibly can, and build that. Young folks won't know what this is, but build that Rolodex, build your contact list, and most importantly, don't be afraid to ask. Call somebody up and say, "Hey, I'm having a problem with this. Can you help me with that?"
Yeah, I'd rather look stupid once by asking a question I might have should have known the answer to than to be stupid forever.
Right.
I've tried it both ways. There may be some folks, if you're okay with this, that says, "Oh, I'd like to ask him this question about, or he mentioned this in the podcast. I'd like to ask him this." How would people be able to get in touch with you?
The best way to do it would be email. My email address is Todd, TODD, at johnssoninsurance.org. Anyone can email me at that. Want to have a conversation about anything we talked about now, or if they got questions, I actually love talking to folks about the business and anything I can do to help. People have been very generous with their time with me, so I feel like I owe it forward, and I love having the opportunity to do that. Now, if someone has issues, granted this is only North Carolina, but if they can get in touch with you, or if you want to, if they have questions about certain stuff that's legislatively related, I have no problem talking to that either. Of course, that information is publicly available on the legislative website. They can pull that, but reach out to us for that if there's something. We got a lot of new stuff coming along in insurance in North Carolina, especially starting July 1, that people are going to have some questions about. So,
yeah, Lisa was talking about that this morning. Todd, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Insurance Agency Success Podcast, where independent insurance agents like you get the tools and insights to grow, streamline, and enjoy your business. If today's episode gave you something valuable, please take action and start making changes in your agency today. And if you're ready to simplify operations and scale, visit genesissoftware.com and click on the orange button to book your demo. I appreciate you being here. Keep building, keep growing, and I'll see you next time.